Something has shifted inside Buckingham Palace this summer, and it isn't the kind of thing the palace press office puts in a statement. For years, the story we were told was simple. Harry left, the family closed ranks, and King Charles and Prince William stood shoulder to shoulder as the two men holding the institution together. That version of events is starting to look outdated. According to multiple royal reporters, the real tension in the House of Windsor right now isn't between Charles and Harry. It's between the king and his own heir. Let's walk through what's actually being reported, because the details here are stranger than the headlines suggest. In July of 2026, King Charles and Queen Camilla hosted Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and their two children at Highgrove House, the king's private estate in Gloucestershire. This wasn't a photo opportunity. It wasn't announced in advance. Vanity Fair's royal correspondent Katie Nicholl reported that not even William and Kate knew the meeting was happening until after the fact. A source close to the king described the hour-long sit-down as completely cloak and dagger, something orchestrated quietly and deliberately by Charles himself. Think about that for a second. This is the King of England, sneaking around his own son's back to see his other son. That's not a family working through its problems in the open. That's a father who has apparently decided he can't have this conversation with William in the room, so he's not having it in the room. While Charles was meeting Harry's family at Highgrove, William and Kate were across the country at a polo event in Windsor, reportedly with no idea what was unfolding a few hours away. When it came out afterward, the optics did the talking. The heir to the throne was the last to know about a private reunion inside his own family. If the Highgrove meeting was a quiet move, what came next was not. The British Sun reported that Charles is now planning to offer Harry a room inside Buckingham Palace itself during an expected visit in September. Not a hotel. Not Frogmore Cottage, which the family already stripped from Harry after his memoir came out. The actual palace. Royal commentators have been blunt about what this means. One expert told Fox News Digital that the gesture, if it happens, would be the most visible royal endorsement Harry has received in years, and a direct rebuke of William's position. Not a subtle one, a direct one. Because here's the thing people keep leaving out of the coverage. William has made his stance on Harry very clear, and it isn't ambiguous. Where Charles wants healing, multiple sources describe William as wanting accountability first. A hard line. No open door until Harry has, in William's view, actually reckoned with what he put the family through. So when Charles offers Harry a bedroom in the king's own residence, he isn't just being a dad. He's overriding his son's judgment on a matter William clearly considers serious. And he's doing it publicly enough that it was guaranteed to get back to William within the hour. This is where it gets uncomfortable. According to a report from Heat World, palace aides have grown genuinely worried about the dynamic between father and son. One insider used the phrase collision course to describe where Charles and William are currently headed. Another called the situation extremely disturbing and worrisome inside the building itself, which is a strong thing for a palace source to say about the king and the future king. The same report claims William has been digging in for the long haul, not treating this as a passing disagreement he'll get over. That's made the ordinary business of running the monarchy harder. Charles and William still have to appear together, still have to brief each other, still have to be seen presenting a united front at state functions. But insiders describe the two men as extremely curt with each other behind closed doors, to the point that one source said you could cut the tension between them with a knife. Sit with that image for a second. Two men who are constitutionally required to work as a team, who cannot simply take a few weeks off from each other the way the rest of us could after a falling out, stuck in daily briefings with a knife-cuttable silence between them. Here's the part of this story that surprised even seasoned royal watchers. The tension between Charles and William isn't purely about how to handle Harry. According to reporting picked up by Yahoo Style Canada, royal biographer Hugo Vickers has pointed to something deeper. Vickers put it plainly. The problem with William, in his assessment, is that William thinks he knows best. That's not a small accusation to level at a future king. And it lines up with a second thread of tension that's been building quietly for months. Charles has reportedly completed something like 175 days of official engagements over the past year. William's public calendar, by comparison, has included several holidays and a noticeably lighter run of appearances. A palace insider told reporters there's a growing sense that Charles feels like he's carrying the weight of the entire institution on his own shoulders, especially when he looks across the table at how much less his own heir is doing. Now put yourself in Charles's position for a moment. He's 77 years old. He's been treated for cancer. He is, by any account, working harder than a man in his position, and health probably should be. And the man who's supposed to be easing that load, the future king himself, is reportedly not carrying his share while also refusing to soften on Harry. From where Charles is apparently sitting, that's not principle. That might look like stubbornness, dressed up as principle. And there's a second layer that's reportedly gotten personal. According to that same Yahoo report, sources say William has told people close to him that Harry will take advantage of Charles if the king lets him get too close again. Charles, according to an insider, took real offense to that. Not mild offense. The insider described it as insulting, because the implication is that Charles, the actual King of England, can't tell when he's being played for a fool. That is not the kind of thing you say about your father lightly, and it's apparently not the kind of thing your father forgets easily either. One more detail that royal watchers keep circling back to. During Harry's most recent UK visit, which included Invictus Games appearances and a private meeting with Charles at Clarence House, William was almost entirely absent from the story. He had his own royal duties that week, sure, but royal expert Robert Jobson has suggested William may genuinely not be losing sleep over being left out of the reconciliation conversation, which, if true, says a lot on its own. This isn't a man scrambling to be included. This is a man who has apparently decided he doesn't need to be in the room. Whether that's quiet confidence or quiet distance from his own father is something even the experts don't agree on. Royal stories get messy when you only hear them in fragments. So let's lay this out in order, because the sequence actually tells you something. Back in February 2024, when Charles announced his cancer diagnosis, that was the last confirmed in-person meeting between Harry and his father before this year, according to reporting picked up by Breitbart. Over a year with no face-to-face contact between a king and his younger son. That's the baseline everyone was working from. Then, according to Radar Online, there was a private tea at Clarence House, roughly 54 minutes long, described as Harry's first face-to-face with Charles since the publication of his memoir back in early 2023. Harry reportedly brought his father a framed photograph, not of himself and Meghan, but likely of Archie and Lilibet. A small gesture, but the kind of detail that tends to matter more to royal watchers than any official statement does, because it suggests Harry was trying to reach Charles as a grandfather first, not as an estranged son negotiating his way back into the institution. Insiders told Radar Online that meeting was described as the start of a gradual thaw after roughly 5 years of estrangement, and that it was part of a broader plan to normalize contact between Harry and the rest of the family over the following year, ahead of any public displays of unity. Note that phrase, ahead of any public displays of unity. Whoever briefed that reporter was telling us this was a slow build, not a one-off. Then came Highgrove in July. Then the September Buckingham Palace offer. Each step bigger than the last. Each one apparently made with less and less input from William. One thing that's been strangely quiet through all of this. Kate Middleton. She's been photographed beside William throughout this stretch, including at that same polo event the day Charles was meeting Harry's family at Highgrove. But she hasn't been reported as taking an independent public position on the Harry question the way William reportedly has. Radar Online's sourcing suggests the tension isn't just contained to Charles and William. Their report claims friction has also touched William and Kate as a pair, with the prospect of Harry's return described as causing genuine friction within that part of the family too. Whether that means Kate is quietly aligned with William's hard line, or whether she's somewhere in the middle trying to keep the peace between her husband and her father-in-law, isn't clear from the public reporting. But if she is playing peacemaker, it's a role she's had a lot of unwanted practice at over the last several years. Here's the part of this story that royal communications people are probably losing sleep over, whether or not they'd ever admit it. Every single one of these moves, the secret Highgrove meeting, the planned palace room, the Clarence House tea, is a decision Charles is making as king, not as a private citizen with the freedom to see whichever kid he wants whenever he wants. As the actual head of state and the head of the Church of England, whose choices about who gets a room in Buckingham Palace carry institutional weight whether he intends them to or not. Every time Charles extends an olive branch to Harry without looping in William first, it does two things at once. It sends a personal message to his younger son that the door isn't closed. And it sends an institutional message, whether Charles means to or not, that the future king's judgment on this issue isn't the final word while the current king is still alive and making decisions. That's an awkward position for any heir to be in. William is 44 years old. He is not a junior royal waiting for his turn to have an opinion. He has spent years building his own public identity, his own priorities, his own read on what the monarchy needs to look like once it's his, and on what may be the single most emotionally loaded family issue of his adult life. He is reportedly finding out about his father's decisions after the fact, from the same royal reporters the rest of us read. If you were in William's position, would you be able to keep smiling through the group photos? It's worth pausing here, because a responsible take on royal reporting has to include this part too. Almost everything specific in this story, the collision course quote, the extremely disturbing and worrisome line, the knife-cuttable tension, comes from unnamed palace insiders relayed through tabloid-adjacent outlets. That doesn't mean it's false. Royal reporters with genuine palace access have broken real stories this way for decades, and several separate outlets landing on a similar picture independently is meaningfully different from one outlet running with a single anonymous tip. But it does mean none of this is confirmed the way, say, an official engagement or a court filing would be confirmed. Buckingham Palace, as is standard practice, has not commented on any of it. Harry's representatives have also declined to comment on the Buckingham Palace room offer specifically. So what we have is a consistent pattern across multiple credible royal correspondence, not a signed confession from anyone inside the building. Keep that in mind before you decide exactly how furious to imagine Charles being, or exactly how cold to imagine William's silence at those family briefings actually is. The broad shape of the story, real tension, real disagreement over Harry, real strain from workload imbalance, looks solid. The precise temperature of any individual private conversation is something none of us outside those walls can actually verify. Here's where the story stands right now, as best anyone outside the palace walls can tell. Charles has met Harry's family in private. Charles is reportedly planning to house Harry inside Buckingham Palace itself in September. William has not budged from his hard line, and, according to insiders, doesn't appear to be planning to. And behind the public unity we're shown at state events, the working relationship between the king and his heir has reportedly turned curt enough that palace staff are using words like collision course to describe it. None of this has been confirmed with an on-the-record statement from Buckingham Palace, and it's worth saying clearly that some of this comes from anonymous insiders rather than official sources, which is standard for this kind of royal reporting but still means it should be read with a healthy amount of caution. But the pattern across several separate outlets, using separate sources, is consistent enough that it's hard to write off entirely. What we're watching, if this reporting holds up, isn't really a story about Harry at all anymore. Harry might be the trigger, but the actual fault line running through the royal family right now looks like it's between a king trying to mend what's broken before he runs out of time to do it, and an heir who's decided that forgiveness has to be earned, not offered. Two very different philosophies of how to run a family. And only one of them gets to be king, while the other one is still Prince of Wales. If Charles keeps pushing and William keeps digging in, something in this dynamic is going to have to give. The only question left is which one of them gives first. If you want to see where this goes when Harry actually walks through the palace doors in September, subscribe, because you know this channel will be covering it the moment it breaks. If it feels like we've seen some version of this before, that's because we have. British royal history has more than a few chapters about a monarch and an heir who simply saw the family and the institution differently. George V and Edward VIII clashed for years before Edward abdicated entirely. Even Elizabeth II and Charles himself went through long stretches of real distance, particularly over how the young Charles was raised and how much freedom he was given to make his own choices, both personal and public. Royal cousin Margaret Rhodes, who knew the family better than almost any outside observer, once told a reporter that the relationship between Charles and his late mother wasn't especially warm either. Her explanation was simple. The institution isn't built to be cozy. It's built to survive. And sometimes survival means the people inside it end up further apart than any of us would want our own families to be. That context doesn't make what's happening now with Charles and William any less real or any less painful for the people living through it. But it does suggest something worth remembering before anyone declares this the end of the monarchy as we know it. Royal families have weathered father-son standoffs like this before, some far more public and far more damaging than anything reported so far between Charles and William. The institution has a long track record of holding together in public no matter how frayed things get in private, right up until the cameras are on and everyone's expected to smile for trooping the color, which might be the most telling detail in this entire story. Whatever is actually happening behind those palace doors, whatever words are being exchanged in those extremely curt daily briefings, the public will probably keep getting the same photograph. Two men in formal dress, standing on the same balcony, waving at the same crowd, giving absolutely nothing away. None of this is easy for a 77-year-old man managing a cancer diagnosis while running a centuries-old institution and trying to hold his own family together at the same time. Charles reportedly wants to fix things with Harry before he runs out of time and chances to do it. That's an understandable instinct for any father, king or not. But every step he takes toward Harry right now seems to come at the cost of his relationship with William. And that's a trade a lot of people in his position would hesitate to keep making. Maybe that's exactly why he's making the Highgrove and Buckingham Palace moves quietly, instead of asking William's permission first. Some fights you only win by not having them at all. For William, the calculation looks different. He's not just weighing whether to forgive his brother. He's thinking about what kind of king he wants to be, years from now, and what precedent gets set if the institution simply absorbs Harry back in without anything resembling the accountability William has reportedly said he wants. That's not a small or petty concern, even if it's easy to frame him as simply the stubborn one in this story. It also means William is, in a sense, negotiating with a version of the monarchy's future that his own father may not be around to see through. Charles gets to make the generous, healing gesture now, and let William deal with whatever comes of it later. That's not necessarily unfair, but it's also not nothing if you're the one who has to live with the consequences the longest. Strip away the tabloid framing, and what's left is a fairly human story, just playing out with a crown at stake instead of a normal family's dining room table. An aging father wants to make peace with an estranged son before it's too late. His older son thinks that peace is being offered too cheaply, without the reckoning he believes should come first. Neither one of them is obviously wrong, and both of them have to keep showing up to work together anyway, in front of the entire world, whether or not they've actually resolved anything behind closed doors. That tension isn't going away in September when Harry supposedly gets his room at Buckingham Palace. If anything, that moment might be when it gets tested hardest. Because a framed photograph and a private tea are one thing. Watching your father hand your estranged brother a set of keys to the building you're supposed to inherit is another thing entirely. We'll be watching to see whether William shows up for that one, or whether, like Highgrove, he finds out about it after everyone else already knows.